Imagine you are 35 years old. You feel good. You are healthy. You have people you love, work that matters, a sense that you are just getting started. And then someone hands you a pill. One pill, taken once, and you will never age again. Your cells will continue to divide, but the errors that accumulate, the telomere shortening, the mitochondrial decay, the protein misfolding that causes everything from wrinkled skin to Alzheimer's disease, all of it stops. Your immune system stays sharp, your organs stay strong, your brain stays clear. You will not die of old age. You will not die of cancer. You will not die of any disease that touches the body through the mechanisms of aging. You will still be mortal. A car can still kill you. A bullet can still kill you. A fall from a great height can still kill you. But the internal clock that every human body carries, the biological countdown that begins at birth and ends, for most people, somewhere between 70 and 90 years, stops ticking. You take the pill. Now let's talk about what actually happens next. The first thing that changes is not your body. It is time. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo of Stanford University, who has spent decades studying human temporal perception, identified what he called time perspectives, the different orientations people hold toward past, present, and future that shape how they make decisions. For most people, the awareness of mortality creates what researchers call temporal urgency, the sense that time is limited, which motivates action, creates meaning, and pushes people to prioritize what matters. Remove mortality, and that urgency disappears. Experimental psychologist Laura Carstensen of Stanford University has spent her career studying what she calls socioemotional selectivity theory, the idea that as people perceive their time as limited, they become more selective about how they spend it, more focused on emotionally meaningful relationships, and more present in their moment-to-moment experience. Her research, conducted across cultures and across the lifespan, consistently finds that older people, precisely because they are aware of their limited time, tend to report higher emotional well-being than younger people. Take away the limit, and the equation reverses. With unlimited time ahead of you, there is no urgency to do anything today. Every relationship, every project, every experience can be deferred. You have forever. You can learn the piano next century. You can visit Japan in 400 years. You can tell the people you love how much they mean to you sometime in the next few decades. This is the first paradox of immortality. Infinite time makes time worthless. But let's say you are disciplined. You structure your immortal life. You commit to projects, maintain relationships, keep moving. What else changes? The second thing that changes is your relationship with loss. You are now watching everyone you know die. Your parents go first, within the first 40 to 60 years, then your friends, one by one, over the following decades. Your children, if you have them, will age and die while you remain 35. Your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, everyone who knew you as a young person, who shared your cultural context, your references, your language in its current form, all of them will be gone within a century. Psychiatrist and grief researcher Colin Murray Parkes of King's College London, who spent decades studying bereavement, found that grief is not simply an emotional response to loss. It is a fundamental disruption of the assumptive world, the internal model of reality that each person builds over a lifetime. Every significant loss forces a rebuilding of that model. For an immortal, that rebuilding process never ends. Every century brings a new wave of loss. Every generation of loved ones ages and disappears while you remain unchanged. There is no cultural name for what you would become. Not a widower, not an orphan, not a survivor. Something entirely new. A person for whom loss is not a chapter in a life, but a permanent condition of existence. Psychologist Judith Herman of Harvard Medical School, in her landmark work on trauma, described how repeated, inescapable loss produces a distinct psychological profile, a kind of chronic traumatization that differs qualitatively from acute grief. You would not grieve each loss the way a mortal grieves. You would accumulate loss across centuries until it became the architecture of your psychology. The question is not whether you could survive this. You would. The question is who you would become. The third thing that changes is identity. You are not the same person at 35 that you were at 15. The experiences you have had, the relationships you have formed, the failures and revelations of 2 decades have changed not just what you think, but the structure of how you think. Psychologists call this psychological continuity, the thread of memory and narrative that connects who you are now to who you were then. Philosopher Derek Parfit of Oxford University spent much of his career thinking about personal identity across time. In his landmark work, Reasons and Persons, Parfit argued that psychological continuity is a matter of degree, that the person you will be in 50 years shares some but not all of the psychological connections that make you who you are today. He concluded that the boundaries of personal identity are not sharp and that what matters is not identity itself, but the continuation of what you value. Over centuries of lived experience, how much of what you value now will survive? The things that feel essential to who you are, your political views, your aesthetic sensibilities, your sense of humor, your relationships, your sense of what matters, all of these will be reshaped by experience across a timescale no human mind has ever navigated. By the time 500 years have passed, the person who took that pill at 35 may share almost nothing psychologically with the person who exists at 535. Same body, same memories in some form, but a completely different person. This raises the most unsettling question of immortality. Is it actually you who lives forever? Or does a new person emerge every century, carrying the memories of the previous ones like a relay baton, while the original you quietly ceases to exist? The fourth thing that changes is the world. You are now living in a world that is constantly changing around you while you stay the same. The language evolves, the culture transforms, political systems rise and collapse. Technologies appear that would be incomprehensible to your 35-year-old self, and then become obsolete, and then are forgotten. Linguist David Crystal of the University of Wales has documented how languages transform beyond recognition over 500 to 1,000 years. The English of Chaucer's 14th century is effectively a foreign language to a modern speaker. You would need to continuously relearn your own native language across your immortal lifespan. More disorienting than linguistic change is the loss of shared context. Every generation builds its understanding of the world on the accumulated knowledge of the previous ones, but also on a shared set of cultural touchstones, the events, stories, and experiences that create a common framework for making sense of things. For a mortal, that framework lasts a lifetime. For you, it will be rebuilt over and over, each time from scratch, because everyone who shared your original framework is dead. Sociologist Émile Durkheim described this sense of disconnection from one's social context as anomie, a condition of normlessness in which the individual is unmoored from the shared values and meanings that give life its structure. You would experience anomie on a civilizational scale, repeatedly, every few generations. And yet, some of the world's greatest thinkers have argued that immortality, for all its psychological costs, would produce something valuable that mortality cannot. Philosopher Bernard Williams of Cambridge University, in his famous essay, The Makropulos Case, argued that immortality would ultimately become intolerable, that without the constraint of death, human life would lose the categorical framework that makes our projects, our loves, and our ambitions meaningful. Williams believed that a genuinely immortal person would eventually find themselves in a condition of radical boredom. Not the ordinary boredom of a Tuesday afternoon, but an existential emptiness from which there is no exit. But philosopher Martha Nussbaum of the University of Chicago has pushed back on this view. Nussbaum argues that what Williams mistook for the necessity of death is actually the necessity of finitude, the condition of being limited, of not being able to do everything. An immortal being who nonetheless had limited time in each moment, limited attention, limited relationships at any one time, limited capacity to pursue all possible experiences simultaneously, might still find meaning and urgency in those moments, even without an endpoint. And there is another possibility that Williams did not fully consider. Imagine what you could learn in 500 years. Not just facts, but the kind of deep understanding that only comes from sustained engagement over decades. The kind of mastery that most mortals glimpse in their best years, but rarely have time to fully develop. An immortal could become a genuine expert in dozens of fields, could watch scientific paradigms form and dissolve and reform, could carry institutional memory across centuries in a way no mortal can, because no mortal lives long enough to see the full arc of a trend. Evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins has noted that the fundamental tragedy of human intellectual life is that the people who develop the deepest expertise in a field, the people who finally understand something in its full complexity after 40 or 50 years of study, are the people who are about to die. Their understanding dies with them. The next generation must rebuild from scratch, never quite reaching the depth the previous generation achieved, before they too run out of time. An immortal would not have this problem. They would accumulate understanding across centuries. They would be the living memory of every field they touched. They would see connections between ideas that no mortal mind could see, simply because no mortal mind has ever had enough time. But here is the final question, the one that cuts deepest. If everyone could live forever, or even if just some people could, what happens to the world? Economist Thomas Malthus identified the fundamental tension between population growth and finite resources in 1798, and while technology has repeatedly deferred the consequences he predicted, the underlying mathematics have not changed. A world in which people stop dying but continue to be born is a world on a trajectory toward resource catastrophe. More subtly, a world in which the same people remain alive indefinitely is a world in which power concentrates and never redistributes. The wealth accumulated by an immortal over centuries would dwarf anything in today's world. The political influence accumulated by an immortal who has been building alliances and institutions for 400 years would be effectively unassailable. Mortality, it turns out, is one of the mechanisms by which human societies renew themselves. The death of one generation creates space, literal and figurative, for the next. New people bring new ideas, new values, new ways of seeing. They inherit a world shaped by their predecessors, but they are not bound to see it the way their predecessors did. Remove mortality, and that renewal stops. So here you are, 535 years old and counting. You have watched empires form and fall. You have seen the invention of things your 35-year-old self could not have imagined. You have loved people whose names no one else alive remembers. You have accumulated understanding that would take a mortal several lifetimes to approach. And every morning you wake up, and you are still 35. The question is not whether you can endure it. You can. The question is whether the person who endures it is still, in any meaningful sense, you. And the harder question beneath that one, whether a world in which you never had to ask that question would have been a better world to live in. The pill is still sitting on the table. And now that you know what it costs, not the price you pay to take it, but the price you pay to keep taking it, morning after morning, century after century, long after everyone who watched you swallow it is dust, what do you do?